Arcade Heroes.
Hey everybody, this is Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and as promised, I am here with a preview for Amusement Expo 2021. Now, if you have no idea what Amusement Expo is, then let me get you up to speed on that, and then I'll get into what we know and what I guess will probably be there. But what it is a trade show that's been around for a long time. It has existed under different names. It used to be called the AMOA show, and that is back in the days of Atari and Midway and Williams and the early days of the arcade industry, or the golden age of the arcade industry. That was what it was known as, and it was the spring show, as they often called it. And it's just a trade show that different manufacturers and different companies that support the arcade and the amusement industry go to show off their latest wares and their latest products. And on my different video channels, mainly YouTube, I have posted videos from Amusement Expo previously. So if you do a search for Amusement Expo in the search bar, you'll find plenty of videos covering various different years. I think the first one that I ever went to was in 2008. And I went to the Amusement Expo that took place last year in New Orleans, Louisiana. And that was one of the last trade shows on the planet, because as I was getting off the plane, returning from that's when the news had hit that some Utah Jazz players had tested positive for COVID-19, and it seemed like that was kind of the cascade, or the events that caused the cascade of lockdowns and panic and all that stuff. And so there haven't been many trade shows. There have been some trade shows out there since, but they've all been lower key and just not really happening for the most part. A lot of them have been canceled, pushed back, and whatnot. Now, last week, and I'm recording this on the last week of June 2021. Last week there was the International Bowl Expo in I think it was that was over in Nashville, Tennessee, and so that actually got the jump on Amusement Expo, I guess. I mean, under normal circumstances, this show would be taking place in March. It's what it's always been. I think maybe one or two exceptions out there being in April, but otherwise usually in March, and it's usually in Las Vegas. Now, of course, this year, just due to the circumstances, they pushed it to the summertime, and so not a lot of people who are planning on going are looking forward to the heat, because if you've ever been to Vegas in the middle of the summer, the heat is absolutely intense. Feels like you're inside of an oven. Even at nighttime when it's dark already, it still can cook you. So that's always fun. But I will be there, and I will only be there for one day, but I will do what I can to capture video of everything that's relevant, primarily video games and pinball machines, although as I'll get into, there's not going to be a lot of pinball there, so I guess I won't have to focus on that too much. But let's get into the different companies that are on the map that are going to be there and what they're going to bring. And again, since I don't focus a lot on Redemption, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those companies, although there are plenty who have what I call Videmption or video redemption games, which are those sometimes oddball games that blur the line. Now, of course, there are some redemption games where they have a video screen on them, but it's really just a scoreboard. It has nothing to do with the actual gameplay. The gameplay is still mechanical, and so those I don't count. And what I count are games where the gameplay is on the screen. It is a video game that you're playing for tickets. But the nice thing is that a lot of those games do have amusement-only modes or non-ticket modes. And so with those, they become real arcade machines, video games in that essence. So we'll do this alphabetically, and with that, the first company that I'm going to talk about is Adrenaline Amusements. Now, the very first time that Adrenaline showed up to the industry would be at an Amusement Expo. I think it was 2010, 2011, somewhere around there, where they actually appeared as a part of Global VR's booth, and they were showing off their very first game called Kaboom, which was a redemption game. And so they've been showing up to Amusement Expo ever since, but now Global VR is nowhere to be found at these shows, although somehow the company still exists, still is in business, I think mainly just dealing with parts. But now Adrenaline has a big booth, and most of their booths are pretty large. They have a lot of games, they have a lot of employees. And so we've seen several games on test from Adrenaline out there at Dave & Buster's and I think some other sites. Mainly right now, the one that's getting a lot of attention is Hungry Hungry Hippos, which Dave & Buster's has as, I believe, a timed exclusive. If it's not at this show, then it's possible that it could just be an exclusive. Although on that game, I have heard, and somebody even sent me a video showing one of the hippos not working anymore. And so as a heavily mechanical game, I guess that's not much of a surprise. But I've been hearing a lot of complaints about this already, so perhaps I'll have to ask them about that and see if there are any plans for upgrades to improve that. But another game that was seen on test, but I've not seen any video of this one, was called Raccoons. And it looks like a dragon riding game, and didn't see the seat, just the screen. And so it was really hard to tell from just a single screenshot exactly how it would play, but it looked like it might just be a proper video game, but won't know for sure until we see this. And again, if this shows up, I think the one thing that's guaranteed to be there would be their Hot Wheels King of the Road game, which they have in both 4-player and 6-player editions. But they haven't announced anything, so who knows for sure. So I'm just guessing on Hungry Hungry Hippos, on Dragons, as well as Twister, which has been seen on test. And Twister would just be a straight up redemption game that has both a hand panel and a foot panel. But of course, if these games do show up, they could also show up with a different design. If they've come up with different designs, sometimes that happens too. But Adrenaline Amusements is there. They're at booth 129, and they're right up front, so it will be impossible to miss them. Next we have Amusement Source International, and this is not a name that a lot of you probably are familiar with. It's not one that I'm terribly familiar with, but they tend to distribute equipment for Wallop, which is a Chinese company that's been around since the 90s. And they haven't been really well known in the States, except for games like Storm Racer G to be more specific, which is actually a sequel to just Storm Racer. But Sega picked up Storm Racer G Deluxe as well as, I believe, the standard version, and so they were selling that. So I don't believe Amusement Source International has that game, but they do have a fairly large booth. They haven't said, at least by what I've seen, what they're bringing to it, but on their website they have Monster Eye 2, which is a light gun game that was initially shown off a few years ago in an environmental deluxe cabinet. But on their website they also have an upright model, and it's mounted guns, not free guns. So maybe they'll bring that. They also list Speed Driver 5, which is a competitor to the likes of Maximum Tune and Initial D. And they'll probably have some redemption pieces like Kickmania. Would be an interesting surprise if they brought Asphalt 9 Arcade, which I have the trailer for on my channel as well. But I don't believe that Wallop has made an announcement yet as to which company they will have distributing that particular game in the United States. Could be ASI or it could be somebody else. We just don't know for sure yet. And then we have Andamiro USA, which is a name that a lot of you know, mainly through Pump It Up, but they are pretty heavy on the redemption side. They do a lot of those sorts of games, and their booth on the map is very small, and because of that I highly doubt that there will be anything Pump It Up. I doubt that there will be anything brand new. They just finished a move to Texas, and so I imagine most of their efforts have been focused on that, and for anything really big and new they'll probably bring it to IAAPA in November. as opposed to this show now, especially with such a small booth. And so my guess would be that they'll have their redemption stuff, like their Avengers 2-player coin/card pusher, their Jurassic World redemption game, the Krabby Party SpongeBob themed whacker game, whack-a-mole style game, and their Soccer Safari SpongeBob game. But I'm not expecting anything else, but always could have a surprise. And that really goes for everybody on this list. Next up at booth 139, also near the front, is another name that you guys will all know pretty well, and that's Bandai Namco Amusements. And they have a sizable booth, but I honestly have no idea what it is that they plan on bringing to the show. And it has been unfortunate that Namco really haven't released any new video games since Maximum Tune 5, and that was back in 2017, maybe 2018. And so it's been a while. Now I have heard things about some games that they have in the works, but not sure that they, well, I was expecting them to have been announced already, so I'll refrain from saying what it is. I do have a pretty strong guess as to one of them, which would be an upgrade to an existing game. But I've also been hearing rumors about something new Pac-Man related, and this hasn't come from Bandai Namco direct, it's come from other sources. So I honestly don't know if that's correct or what it is. It could be just another Pac-Man themed game, like they've done air hockey, they've done basketball, they've done alley bowlers and things like that, so they could put Pac-Man on pretty much anything and see, you know, that's a new Pac-Man game. But I really do hope that they have something new. Also for their own sakes, with the pandemic, it's been tough for everybody, but when you don't have newer equipment to sell, that also makes it tough. But I've also talked with Namco, and they've said that they, at least last year, they would have felt embarrassed to be trying to sell anything new to anybody. And so I am sure that they do have things, well, I do know they have had things in the works, and so it'll just be a question of whether or not they'll use this show to launch those, or if they'll wait until IAPA. And so we'll just have to wait and see. But again, they do have a sizable booth. I'm for certain, I know they'll have stuff like their Red Zone Rush redemption game, which was launched, I think 2019 or maybe it was 2020. And a few of their other redemption pieces. I'm sure Pac-Man's Pixel Bash will also be there, but really hoping for something new since it's been a while from them on the video side. Next up in the B's is Tek Entertainment, and this is a company that has made a strong name for themselves, mainly through their redemption releases. If you've seen Big Bass Will out there, that's Tek, and so you probably already know who they are. But they also have had other very popular machines. Their most recent popular one has been Connect 4 Hoops, and that exists in two different, I guess you could call it, flavors. There was a variation of that didn't have the Connect 4 licensing on it that I want to say it was shown last year on test, but it just kind of disappeared. But Tek does that a lot. They do a lot of testing on different concepts and just kind of see how it goes, but not everything passes the test, and so it gets canceled. And even especially at Amusement Expo, I've seen several of their games where it was shown at Amusement Expo and never seen again. Battleship from 2014 is one of those that is like that. And so it's very possible that they could have several new stuff around and just no idea what it's going to be until we get there. But one thing that I am certain should be there is their Hypernova game. This is a redemption game that was brought to Amusement Expo last year, and it went through various changes, and it has been for sale for a little while now. But there's also the one that's been making some waves, and this is thanks to Dave & Buster's. Now at Dave & Buster's, you've probably seen an axe throwing game called Hatchet Hero. That's designed by Tek, and by everything that I've heard is they are releasing that to the wide industry, but it'll just be under a different name. And as far as I know, the game will be exactly the same, it just has the different name. And so the industry name will be Axe Master. And so I do expect that to be there as well. But whether or not anything else will be, we'll just have to wait and see. Then we have Boxblaster, and this is one that I've seen a few times. They were at Amusement Expo last year as well. They are a VR-focused company that is competing in the same space as Hologate, and so every time that I've seen their stuff, it has a 4-player setup, it has an enclosure up top, and I believe it's connected VR headsets. I'm not sure if they have any wireless solutions. I think it's all wired. And they have different unique games that are exclusive to their platform, and I believe unique controls as well, and so expect that to be there. But they've also been doing something in collaboration with another company, Elaut USA, Benchmark Games, which is owned by Elaut. It's a little weird, but I'll talk about them in a moment. But we have one other company to get to first, and that is in the seas. That's Coastal Amusements. And this is a company that has made a really strong name for themselves doing redemption games. And the one that they're possibly best known for was released back in 2008, and this was the first time that I had ever heard of Coastal Amusements, and that's when they showed off Seawolf, the Seawolf remake, and they did 2 additional sequels to that, or major upgrades. I don't know if you'd call them sequels, but they were kind of sequels, plus upgrades, gold upgrades, I don't know. But they were, the thing that they're best known for these days would be Iceman, the water shooting game that's essentially Plants vs. Zombies, but you spray the zombies with a water gun and it freezes them on the screen, and the frame rate is absolutely terrible. And there's been other games that have come along doing the same thing with much better frame rates, but nothing has been able to compete with the might of Iceman, because on the earnings it just does crazy good, and so nobody really cares that the frame rate sucks on that one. So it's possible that they could have something along those lines. The last time that I saw them, which as I recall was IAPA 2019, they did have something that was similar to Iceman, but a different game, different name. I can't remember what it was because I haven't seen it. It's not on their website, and so I don't think they carried it. But they also showed something at IAPA 2019 that was kind of cool, and you can find it on my channel. I think it was Wild West Shootout. And so it was, while a redemption game, you could set it to an amusement mode and just play it as a straight up light gun shooting game, and it was Western themed, and the pistol controllers were pretty cool and actually have coil, or kind of a coil feedback to them, although it's more you pull the trigger and the hammer goes back on the gun and it snaps, and so it's I don't think it's electrical at all, it's just purely mechanical. And the game was decent from what I remember, but it's been a while. They have that too. The only thing that they've announced that for sure is definitely coming there is Ring Toss Junior, which is just a smaller version of their popular Ring Toss kind of carnival redemption game, although I'm sure their larger version will be there as well. Now getting to Elaut USA, they are at booth 740. And they were at Bowl Expo last week, and they were kind of the only company that really made announcements, sent out PR about stuff that they were bringing to the expo, although their PR didn't really explain a lot of what it was that was actually going to the expo. It was just a tease, I guess, to try and get people to go there. But for something like this, and especially these days, I don't think there's a lot of last-minute people who are just like, I guess I'll go to Tennessee and go to a trade show. But it's kind of typical in this industry as far as how a lot of that marketing goes. But they showed off 3 games, and these were developed by other companies, but they are representing them as they're the official sales and distribution rep for these particular games in the United States. And so the first one is Space Warp 66, which I've also seen called the Mega Model, as there is now a smaller model with a 43-inch monitor, and now this new model with a 65-inch monitor. Same game, but just a bigger screen, although there is a software update, which I wrote about on arcadeheroes.com. where they've enhanced some things based on feedback, and they also came up with new artwork that's a lot more vibrant, so it's not as, I guess if it's in a dark place like in my two arcades, which are fairly dark here, then it would stand out better thanks just to that artwork. But on top of that, you have Surf and Safari, and this is a game that I've also mentioned on the blog. This is a redemption game designed by Team Play, and it's been on test for I think a couple of years already. And it's a surfing game, and it has a surfing controller, and so there's handlebars on the sides that you use to balance yourself, and then you balance yourself on the surfboard and play a surfing game of some kind to win tickets. I don't know if that one has an amusement mode. I should say Space Warp 66 does, but I don't know on Surf and Safari, so I'll have to ask about that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Boxblaster was doing a collaboration with one of the Elaut-owned companies, which is Benchmark Games, and that is something called the VR Experience. And this is essentially a single-player version of the Boxblaster VR, kind of arcadified so that it can go into more arcades, and they say it's unattended VR. It looks kind of similar in the concept to the VRSenal, like the Beat Saber arcade and the Vader Immortal Lightsaber Dojo. That's also going to be at the show. Obviously, they came up with their own cabinet design, so it's not a straight rip-off or anything like that. And from my understanding, the VR Experience will offer all of the Boxblaster VR games on it, and so people can just pick that. But the odd thing is that the show, the pictures, and I saw a very brief video of it, it didn't have any VR headset attached to it. So it looks like it's a very early prototype still, just kind of a conceptual thing. So whether or not the Amusement Expo version will have the VR headset, I guess we'll just have to show up and see. But don't know if Boxblaster will have that at their booth as well as the Elaut booth, or just the Elaut booth. One of those things we'll discover once I get there. Now, for a company that is not new as far as the coverage on Arcade Heroes, I've been talking about this company since 2018. I have a bunch of videos from them on my YouTube channel out of direct captures because I have one of their machines. I was among the first to grab one in the United States, and that is exA-Arcadia. And they are at booth 338, very close to the Sega booth. I believe Sega's is 339. They do have a smaller booth than Sega, but they have a bigger booth than, say, like Andamiro USA. And this is exA-Arcadia's first official showing to the United States industry. They have done trade shows, or at least maybe one trade show, I can't remember, one or two, JAPO over in Japan. But this is definitely the first time that they will be making an appearance in the United States like this. They were at California Extreme 2018, but again, that was more for collectors, and that was before the system had even launched, although they did have some games there and working and playable, and I have videos of those on my YouTube channel if you search for CAX 2018. But this is going to be a big showing for exa because they are going to bring somewhere between 25 to 30 games. And so all of the games that you find on their website that's under the games listing, they should be there. And they are also going to announce some new games that aren't there yet. Now, I did get word that their biggest announcement that they were going to make with a particular partner has to be delayed until July. And so unfortunately we won't be able to talk about that one. I do know what it is, and I can guarantee you this is a big name, big partner. Everybody knows who this is, and you're going to be familiar with their games. And so just hang tight for July as to what the first game from this company, from this partner, is going to be. But unfortunately it won't be at the expo, but there will be some new games from exA-Arcadia there. And then the other thing that's going to be from exa there is, I'll show this image here, these are the new dedicated cabinets. Now, this was designed by Fun Company, which is based out of Wisconsin, and Fun Company is the same one that I used to design my cabinet. However, exa has been working closely with the guys at Fun Company to make a customized version that they would call the dedicated exa cabinet. And as you can see here, there are 3 different models. There's a 4-player version with a horizontal screen, and that'll work great for games like Lightning Nights and Nippon Marathon Turbo. They have a vertical 2-player model and a horizontal 2-player model. That the control panel for this is different than the one that I have, so there is a specific place made for holding the instruction cards, and they have different instruction cards than what normally come with the kits. And then there is also a menu button, so you just push that and you go straight back to the menu. The shape of the control panel is also different, and the buttons are also backlit. And so I don't have any of that on my existing exa machine. However, on my exa, which is sitting right here in front of me, I'm at the location where it's at right now, I do have a 65-inch 4K TV. All of these do come with 4K TVs, although I believe they're 55-inch ones. And so these dedicated units will also become available for the industry to purchase starting at Expo. And so if any of you are headed to the Expo and you want to see somebody with a lot of game offerings, then go to the exA-Arcadia booth, because they are showing more brand new games that the industry has never seen before than anybody else. And as far as I know, at least in modern times, ever since I've been covering it, nobody's brought this many games to one booth. And of course, it's because they have this system, and obviously they don't have the space to have enough cabinets for all of the games to be playable at the same time. Maybe in IAPA in the future, but those will be selectable, those will be playable. And so this is going to be a very big event for them, and of course I will capture the news, video and the news of what their new stuff is going to be. Now, related to the exA-Arcadia, but not the same thing, different company, but they are using an exa-compatible hardware system, is one that I've mentioned before. And to be honest, I'm a little unsure how to cover this, because normally my content is safe for work. It's not XXX or not safe for work, but this company called Hawt Pink will also have their system, but it won't be at the show, it'll be off-site. But I will get a chance, or hope to get a chance, to see this in person. They'll have 4 games there, and so we'll see how that goes. And I'll have to see exactly how I handle that, because I've never had to deal with not safe for work content on YouTube before. So I'm sure there's a way to set it up. I know it won't be eligible for ads and all that stuff, but that's fine. But I'll have to figure out how to deal with that. But they will also be around Vegas and showing off what they have, and I guess I'll have to see if they'll have more than 4 games there, but I know for sure that there are 4 titles. And again, it's exa compatible. It is not exA-Arcadia, it is a different company. Hawt Pink is based out of Europe, but due to travel restrictions, they can't be there. And so, but they've found a way to have their first batch of games as well as the hardware system there. And so I'll get more information on that. Now, back on the show floor at booth 451 is another name that you will be familiar with, and that is ICE. That's short for Innovative Concepts and Entertainment, but on their games it just says ICE, because Innovative Concepts and Entertainment, not only a mouthful, it's a lot to print onto a machine, so it's just easier to use ICE. Now, I haven't seen any announcements from anything that they are intending on bringing to the show, so I can only guess that it would be stuff that's more recent, such as Monopoly Roll and Go, which did debut at the last Amusement Expo, but they do like to show off some new stuff, and they've had time to work on that, so it's very possible that they could have something new there. I'm sure their all-in redemption game will be there, and probably their Wheel of Fortune, but whether or not they'll bring their Pro line, which is designed just for homes, I don't know if that would show up. It would be interesting to see the Jurassic Park home version, that's there. Of course, not available on console, just available through this home edition unit, but we'll have to wait and see if they surprise us with anything like that. For a name that I don't talk about very often because they rarely seem to do anything video related is Jennison Entertainment. They merged with Family Fun Companies a couple of years ago, and Family Fun moved their operations from Illinois to Florida. And Family Fun did have a number of redemption games, whereas Jennison did not. But looking at Jennison's website, they don't seem to have anything that's redemption related right now. It's mainly just kiddie rides and redemption stuff, so I don't know if I'll be covering them, but they are at booth 157. I'll check them out still, just in case. And another one that's also just focused on redemption that's going to be nearby at booth 175 is Komuse, and I spoke about this one on the most recent News Bites post, as this sees the return of Satinder Bhutani to the industry. He announced his retirement last year, which was somewhat surprising, although I guess not completely surprising just because it happened right in the middle of the pandemic, and so I guess for some it made sense who have been in the industry for a long time to just say, hey, this is a good time to retire. But I guess something came around where he decided to come out of retirement. And so he'll be there. They did announce 3 games that will be there. None of them are video. One's a prize merchandiser, and then there are 2 redemption games. But I'll still just check it out just in case, if you never know. And say hi to Satinder. He's a great guy if you've never met him before. And then next on the list is LAI Games at booth 465. They've announced that they are bringing 3 games to the show at least. I believe they'll have more than this because their booth space is fairly large, and I would be surprised if they didn't bring something like Virtual Rabbids VR. Hopefully they bring the Outnumbered game, because I think, I have that one, so I guess that's why I'm shilling for it. I think it's fun. I like it, but they haven't mentioned it in their PR yet. But what they have mentioned that will debut at the show is Angry Birds Coin Crash, the new coin pusher, which I also did a video of on this channel a little while back, and I believe it's fairly similar except for the artwork. And then there's Pearl Fishery 2-player, which is another pusher-like machine that debuted at IAAPA 2019 in a 3-player model, so now there'll be a 2-player model. And then they have a new take on their classic Slam & Jam basketball machine that they call Slam & Jam Ultra, which adds a video screen and more elements to the gameplay to make it a little more exciting, a little bit more like a video game, although not completely, and so that will be there too. Now, for one of the biggest booths at the show, you'll have to go to booth 351, and that is where you will find Raw Thrills. Now, it's always a little strange. They never say it's the Raw Thrills booth, it's the Betson booth, and this is, of course, where a lot of people accuse Betson and Raw Thrills of being the same company, but it is technically Betson. But again, it's going to be pretty much all Raw Thrills, except for maybe like Betson parts. So this is where you can expect to find Minecraft Dungeons Arcade, and this is where I expect to be. This is going to be the first time that I get a chance to see this game. I had been told by my distributor, which is Betson on this particular game, that it was supposed to be here last week when I initially contacted them about it, but I guess plans change, and of course shipping is a bit of a nightmare right now, but at the moment I have no idea when my Minecraft is showing up, so it'll be here when it gets here, and so I'm guessing next month sometime right now. But I'll get a chance to finally check this game out and get some footage of it. We'll also have King Kong VR, which will be the release version. I did get to see this one at Amusement Expo 2020, but that was just an earlier version of it, and things have changed about it quite a bit between then and now. And then I assume other Raw Thrills products will be there, like Superbikes 3 and Nitro Trucks and etc. Could we see a surprise from Raw Thrills? It's possible. There is one game out there that I've seen. Various people have sent me pictures of this on test, and I've tried to get more info about it from Raw Thrills, but initially, at one point they said it was canceled, and then they said it wasn't, and so this would be Tecmo Bowl. Right now it's Tecmo Bowl 2021, And so who knows what's going on with that. But last time I talked with Raw Thrills, they did say that it was just put on hold. And so this is essentially a new version of the classic NES Tecmo Bowl. And from what I've seen, the graphics are in 3D. It's not trying to recreate the NES look or anything. But it also vends cards, and it's licensed using the NFLPA. And so you will be able to collect cards with that. And well, they haven't said anything about this in relation to Minecraft. That's my guess, is that it's just probably don't want to launch two card-based games at the exact same time. So that's another reason why this might not be there, since Minecraft would probably want to get all of the attention in that regard. But it is a smaller cabinet than Minecraft, and so I'd also assume a smaller price tag. And so for locations that maybe don't have the space for Minecraft, or for some reason aren't interested in it, even though Minecraft is the biggest name in gaming out there, that might be where they want to go more towards Tecmo Bowl. But I have no idea whether or not that'll be there, or if there will be anything else, because Raw Thrills has been working on other games that aren't announced, and they like to wait until the last minute to announce them, or usually they like to wait till trade shows to actually show things that they've been working on off. Otherwise, things will be on location test out there. It's just whether or not we hear about it just depends on who shows up at these location tests and what they share about them. And so I've been told before that there have been some games, like I think it was the snowboarder game, that had been on test for 2, 3, 4 years, and nobody had ever sent me anything about it. And by the time it showed up at IAPA, and so please, if you do see a game out there that's unknown, then send me info. I'm happy to talk about it if I can. And so, yeah, we'll have to see if there's anything else from Raw Thrills. Since it's such a huge booth, it's certainly possible, unless, of course, they would just want to fill it up with Minecraft and King Kong. I don't know, but we shall see. And then on the R's, we have the really big crane company. Now, at the last Amusement Expo, they did show a video arcade game that was combined with a basketball machine, and that was Zombie Jam. And that was very interesting because, I mean, it worked kind of like the Connect 4 hoops. So it had, I think it was 5 different hoops to shoot for, but the video screen had these zombies climbing ladders, and you had to throw your basketballs into each hoop to fire a cannon to shoot the zombie down. Kind of a Plants vs. Zombies style gameplay concept, but different enough. And so I guess we'll see if that's there, or if they come out with any other video stuff. I mean, obviously, because of their name, their main focus is crane machines, and I don't really cover those, but it's always a nice surprise when one of these crane companies come out with something that is video related, like Zombie Jam. Now for another name that's a big player in the industry and has been for decades, that would be Sega Amusements. They are found at booth 339, and it's not a huge booth, but I have seen them discussing a little bit of what will be there. Don't know for certain the entire roster. I assume it'll also be similar to what was shown in Bowl Expo last week, where that just had ATV Slam, Mario and Sonic Olympics for the video games, and then had some of Sega's redemption pieces. And I saw an email earlier today that was also talking about Mario and Sonic at the 2020 Olympics, although I guess it's technically 2021. But the game was already released last year in February 2020, of course, before everything came to a screeching halt. And so obviously now that the Olympics are about to start or underway, I'm not 100% sure on that, they are going to be showcasing that game primarily at Amusement Expo. So also assume ATV Slam would be there. Now maybe Mission Impossible would be there. It was at Amusement Expo last year, and I would also imagine that Amusement Expo will be a better place to be touting that game due to its size and cost, as opposed to something like Bowl Expo, which is more for bowling alleys, as opposed to places that always get the biggest, latest arcades. I mean, some of them do, but not all of them. And of course, with shipping costs being pretty outrageous in some regards right now, then probably makes sense to, if you have two shows, pick the one that you're probably going to have the most potential buyers at. So I would guess that Mission Impossible is going to be there, but don't know for sure. Now, one thing that I believe is not going to be there, at least from what I've heard through the grapevine, but it would be nice because I've been hearing about this game since 2019, I think, and that was Men in Black. Now, talked about this on the blog a little bit because when Taito was testing out their Densha to Go train simulator arcade machine, just so happened that there was a location test for Men in Black sitting right behind it to the right, and that's by Sega. And it is a redemption game from what I've heard, mounted guns, very unique looking cabinet, but of course with testing, who knows what can change. Of course, games can also be canceled, but not sure that Men in Black is going to be there. I would say most likely not. And so if that one does hit the release schedule, then I would assume that if it isn't at Amusement Expo, that it would be at IAAPA, and that takes place in November. But that's all I know about for Sega. So moving on from them is Stern Pinball. They are not too far away. They're right by where Rothrills and Betson is at booth 267. And I'm not 100% sure if Stern has attended any big events. Most of the pinball events have been canceled, and that's where they do prefer to show off all their latest stuff, or if they have some game that's being announced around the time of when they normally announce things, they'll take it to one of those more pinball focused shows. But of course, there just haven't been a lot of trade shows anyways overall, and so this is not the first event that the Mandalorian will appear at, because it was at Bowl Expo last week, but for a lot of us, including myself, who haven't come across that machine yet, it'd be the first time that a lot of us will get to play it. So the Mandalorian will be there, Led Zeppelin, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all the more recent stuff from Stern, possibly Stranger Things, which debuted close to the last Amusement Expo, but of course all these other games hadn't had the chance to be at expos. But I should also mention that as far as I'm aware, Stern Pinball is the only one that's going to be representing pinball at Amusement Expo, as there's no booth for American Pinball, Jersey Jack, or Spooky Pinball. Of course, I don't think Spooky has ever really attended these sorts of events. Nothing for Deep Root, those guys who kept saying that they were going to have something out, and still nothing as far as I know. So I guess there is a small possibility that something from American or Jersey Jack could be there, because there are some distributors that have booths, and oftentimes they'll have a collection of things that they distribute. And so I'm not sure if like Moss or Schaefer have a strong connection to American or Jersey Jack pinball. But even then, Jersey Jack just really has never supported Amusement Expo very much. They've been to a couple of them, but for the most part, they usually don't have a booth. All right, we're almost done here. A lot of these cuts have been interruptions, and so it's funny, as when I'm not filming, it can be dead, and then when I start filming, all of a sudden I need to help some people out. So nothing wrong with that, of course. And so after Stern, we have Triotech. They are at booth 375. And they were at Amusement Expo last year, and they've been to some other Amusement Expos as well. But when they go to this event, they tend to bring their more arcade products, arcade style products, like the Typhoon, and they have the Storm VR, which is, I'd say, the evolution of the Typhoon. I don't recall seeing them bring like the XD Theater to any of the shows, or their dark rides or anything like that, which takes a lot more setup and has a lot higher cost for them to have to handle, and so it's a lot easier to send those more arcade format machines to shows like this, and so that's what I expect there, although they do have a pretty sizable space, although as I recall at Amusement Expo 2020 they also had a pretty large space, but they kind of spaced them, all the machines out, and this was before there was talk of social distancing and those sorts of things with machines. And then we had Valley-Dynamo. I don't expect them to have any video games, although I guess there's always a surprise like that could pop up. But in addition to their pool tables and their shuffleboard and their foosball tables, they did a few years ago get involved with the baseball machines. These are like pinball machines, but instead of having two flippers, they only have one giant flipper. And it works a lot like a baseball game and a machine. And so you have a pitch button and that launches the ball, instead of from the side of the playfield, it's from the center where the pitcher's mound would be, and that launches it at the bat, and then you have a separate button to hit the bat, and then you make shots into different goals or targets that represent different baseball terms, you know, first base, second base, third base, outfield, all that stuff, home run. And those also had a cool little mechanical team in the back box that would move around according to the positions that you were able to get. And now it's been a few years since those were released, and to be honest, they were a bit pricey, and so I don't know how many places grabbed them, but it's still possible that they could have one of those two or both of them there. As I remember, there was All-Star Baseball and All-Star Zombies, something like that. The names were close to each other, but not quite. There was something about them different, but I haven't looked into them in a while. And so they're at booth 251. Also, since I've mentioned some VR companies, there is Virtuix. They have the Omni Arena, and I believe they'll have a single Omni Arena unit there. For a while, Eunice was working with them, and then they just went off and did their own thing where they have this giant black and green enclosure and tinted windows so you can barely see in it, to try and entice people to want to see more. It's like, oh, what's this VR thing? And I do have a video of this, I think from IAAPA 2016 when they were at IAAPA with Eunice. And they have the omnidirectional treadmills so that you can walk around a virtual environment without moving your physical location. And so they've been promoting that, and they're still around, survived the pandemic, and so they'll be at the show, as will VRSenal. VRSenal is at booth 225, and funny enough, on the map they changed it from VRSenal to just say Vader Immortal Lightsaber Dojo. And so this is the company that had Beat Saber arcade out for a while, but Facebook, I believe, pulled that license or something went on there. And Facebook has always been kind of antagonistic towards using VR in a space like this, an arcade space, and I don't know why that is. And my friend Kevin Williams had told me about that in the past, and that still didn't make a whole lot of sense as to why they were so anti-amusement, anti-arcade. But anyways, VRSenal, they were at IAAPA, I think it was 2018 when I first saw them, and they had Beat Saber there, but they had a few other games like Fruit Ninja, and they had a Predator game, which as far as I know that was never released, and it was popular. There were a lot of people checking it out, but I didn't get a chance to play the game myself. There was always a line to play it, and so I don't know how that actually worked out at the end of the day. I mean, other than obviously it wasn't good enough to get released, or it seems like Beat Saber became so popular that they just focused on that instead of worrying about all the other stuff. And at this point, it looks like they're just focused on Vader Immortal, which makes sense, you know, a Star Wars license like that. It's a big thing to have. And so that's what they seem to be going with entirely. And so I won't expect any other games there, since that's what they named their booth. Now, that covers all the companies, all the major companies. There are other companies there that are involved with the industry. I know like Smart Industries will be there with their crane machines, although from what I recall it wasn't a huge booth. For those that will not be there, I already mentioned American Pinball and Jersey Jack Pinball. I don't see Baron Games International on the list. They generally do things like air hockey and certain kid-focused redemption games. They're still in business. I was able to get parts from them a brief time ago, but I haven't heard much in the way of announcements. And also Unis will not be there. And they did the big virtual show back in October, which I covered on the blog, and I've covered with some videos here. Right now they have Elevator Action Invasion, which is at all the Dave & Buster's out there, and so a lot of people have been seeing that, but they won't be at this show. They were at Amusement Expo last year, but I think part of it might just be the travel restrictions. They do have an office in Texas, but their main office is in Canada. I can't recall which part of Canada. Obviously it's a huge country, but I think Toronto, but I'm not sure. And so I'm guessing the travel restrictions and also the difficulties of shipping equipment as well as people to the show, probably just too much for them to worry about right now. But of course they do have a lot of products out there. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I wrote down a lot of these things, and that's what I keep referring to, but yeah, I didn't catch any of those others. Or I think I mentioned Hollowgate earlier is not going to be there. And so a lot of these players that we have seen at previous shows aren't at this show, but the show was able to fill out pretty nicely. And so according to the map, I think there's only like 4 or 5 booths that are empty. And so of course, I guess there's always something that could happen where somebody's not able to make it, and then, you know, that's an empty booth there. But according to the plans, that is what has been filled out. And so I think it should be a pretty good show, pretty solid one. Sometimes the spring show, since it's in March and that's still relatively close to IAAPA, they aren't terribly exciting. They might have 1 or 2 new products as opposed to a bunch of them. But of course, given the pause that we've had between major amusement trade shows, this is almost like an IAAPA of a sort. Just obviously IAAPA, for those who aren't aware, that's another big trade show. I've mentioned it multiple times, but it's kind of like the E3 of the arcade and amusement industry, and it's just absolutely massive. It happens every year in Orlando in November, usually the week before Thanksgiving. And it's like 10 miles worth of aisles that you can walk along. And now, of course, a lot of that, a majority of that's not arcade stuff. There's a lot of things that involve theme park rides and food support for theme parks, inflatables, and some other things that are just tailored towards the amusement or theme park business. But it's still cool. And there are some things that pop up there that are not necessarily in the arcade area, which are still arcade related or can be adapted into an arcade sort of product or theme or something along those lines. And so that one's always the event to go to if you have to choose between trade shows to visit. IAAPA is usually the one that is recommended. But you know, like I said, Amusement Expo, I always enjoy that, other than, you know, the 1 or 2 times where there might not have been anything new. But I think they've been working harder in recent years to always ensure that there's more there. And when you have companies like exA-Arcadia who just have a couple of dozen or more games to show off, then that becomes a nice thing to keep you busy for a while. And so, I mean, unfortunately, just due to the way that flights are right now, things are really crazy with that. And of course, I need to come back and handle my arcade business here. I only have 1 day that I'm going to be at the show, so I'll be leaving the next morning and won't get a chance to do day 2. So I am hoping that I have enough time to check everything out. I mean, there have been cases in the past where Amusement Expo, I'm able to check everything out in a few hours and I'm good. Because again, I've seen a lot of it at IAAPA, but this time will certainly be interesting. And so stay tuned to the channel as well as my social media for updates along those lines. And I mean, sometimes my access to the internet is a little wonky at the convention center, and so I might not be able to provide constant updates, but I will try as best I can to do that. And so thanks for watching this preview. Hope I didn't bore you. too much. There's a lot of exciting things still happening in the arcade space, and like I've posted on arcadeheroes.com, there are a lot of arcades that are open out there and are even opening for the first time, that are having grand openings, and so the industry is not dead. All of this trade show stuff would not be happening. These companies wouldn't exist, these products wouldn't exist if there was no industry to sell them to. And so it's just a ridiculous notion that it's dead. And so, yeah, there's plenty to look forward to, and so it'll be an exciting event. And of course, I'll also be at IAAPA 2021 in November, and so lots of stuff to go around. But we'll see you on the upcoming videos. Thanks for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you around.